name is Deneen Hinton. I'm the Community Education Specialist here at Alliance Health. Just want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining. Today, we're going to talk about Youth Mental Health 101. That's our topic. I got one little icebreaker that it won't take us long, but if everybody, or you don't have to, but if you choose to, could you just put in the chat what your mood is today, like right now? Because I can't see everyone, smiley faces, so I'm just curious to know, what is your mood? And be honest. I know that I am chipper, fairly good mood today. Oh, wow. Let me see.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Kimberly Gales. I'm with Precious Haven Incorporation here in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Oh, okay. Good morning. Peaceful. Somebody said they're peaceful. That's good. Tired but content. Calm, anxious, and happy. If we have any young people that's joining us.
I'm excited.
Excited?
Yes.
Good. Woke up
Grateful.
joyous. Happy.
Grateful.
Joy. Optimistic. Yes. I got a little smiley face. Anxious. Tired. Yeah, I can relate. Eager. Great. Overwhelmed. Okay. Relieved. It's Friday Eve. I hear you. Hopeful. Calm. Happy. Tired. Beat. Tired. Okay. We might talk about that. Getting some rest. Mentally and physically drained. Working from home and remote learning with an 8th grader. Although I can't relate, I do empathize. I really do. I don't have any young people at home. But my heart goes out to everyone who is teaching from home with a young child. Woke up happy. Okay, great. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. I do want to ask that everyone mute their microphone, and if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. I do have Mr. Osborne, James Osborne, who will be monitoring the chat and will answer any questions or clarifications you might have right away. So feel free to, and also we have a feature that you can raise your hand if there's a burning question. But I will allot for time at the end of the training to ask questions. So this is about 45 minutes long. It's actually a longer presentation, but I condensed into 45 minutes so I can allot for questions at the end. Okay, great. So let's get started. Okay, let's get started. So first of all, I got to give you a little bit of information about who we are, and then we're your public health managed care organization, and we serve people in Durham, Wake, Cumberland, and Johnston counties. We authorize Medicaid dollars to provide the supports through our provider network. So we're 24 hours, 7 days a week information and access to mental health, substance use, and developmental disability services and support. So you can call us at 2 o'clock in the morning if someone you know is experiencing a crisis and you need help or information. Feel free to give us a call. There's a live clinician to take your call. And here is our number. And I just want to add too, this PowerPoint will be available. If you would like a copy or email a copy of the PowerPoint at the end, please just email me and I will do that. Okay, here's our information and help lines 24/7, like I mentioned before. So, okay. So let's go ahead and get started. I do want to I'm going to close this chat. I have to talk about Hope for NC, which is an awesome opportunity for people who is experiencing crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so this is Alliance has partnered with the state to offer this opportunity for anyone who feel like they need to talk with someone and need some counseling that's been impacted by COVID-19, compounded with other crises that they might be experiencing. So it's just not with COVID-19, but if you're experiencing, even with social media now, the videos that are going around of people being killed and senseless deaths, that's also impacting people's mental health, and it's also a crisis for folks. So I want to add that if you are experiencing crisis and you need counseling, you need to talk to someone, please call Hope for NC helpline. And I have it in Spanish as well as English. So if you need a copy of the flyer or the phone number, what have you, please feel free to let me know, okay? Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about on an overview. Like I said, it's going to be a quick overview of what is mental health. Mental health disorders, the impact of mental health disorders, suicide in youth, adolescent development, the risk and protective factors, and effective communication with youth. Okay. So what is mental health? So let's get started with this. The World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes their own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to their life, okay, to their community. And as we all know, mental health varies across different cultures, right? So, and I always tell young people, because sometimes you hear young people say, he's got mental health, something's wrong with him. Everyone has mental health. It's all about whether your mental health if you're well or unwell, okay? So it's a continuum of mental wellness to mental illness, okay? So we want to make sure that we take care of our mental health so that we can stay in a state of wellness, okay? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about mental health. What are mental health disorders? Okay, and the definition I have is a diagnosable illness that affects a person's thinking, emotional state, and behavior. So when it becomes a mental illness or mental disorder, it's when the diagnosis or the illnesses or the symptoms impacts their daily life. They can't, maybe have difficulty in school, making friends, you know, at home. So when it becomes a mental illness and can be diagnosed is when it really impacts their daily life and the things that they are, and that they may struggle with the things that they may need to do on a daily basis. Okay. So let's look at a few. We're going to talk about a few disorders, common mental health disorders in youth. But here's some statistics. And 50% of all lifetime cases of mental illness begin by the age 14. That's why it's so important that young people get the help that they need as soon as there's a problem, as soon as someone recognizes that there may be a problem, because the sooner they get help, the better the outcomes are as an adult. So, and this is pretty shocking that 50%, that's a pretty high number, and 75 by age 24. So that's why youth mental health first aid is so important, but we'll talk about that later. 50% of students age 14 or older with a mental illness drop out of high school. 70% of youth in state and local juvenile justice system have a mental illness. and probably may not need to be in the justice system. 90% of those who died by suicide had an underlying mental illness. Okay. I have some other stats I will share, but we'll talk about the most common disorders, which are anxiety, depression among youth, ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, and conduct disorder. Okay, and we know, and I'm going to give you a brief description of these disorders as well. And I'll start from the bottom. Conduct disorder. If a young person is experiencing aggressive behavior, cruelty to animals, fighting or bullying, and destructive behaviors like arson or deceitful behaviors like lying, that could be a sign of conduct disorder. Those are symptoms of conduct disorder. Oppositional defiant disorder. They could argumentative, have trouble listening. I sometimes say listening to an adult. That the conflicts tend to be arguing. I mean, young people tend to argue with adults, and they don't want to necessarily listen or, do what's asked of them. Aggression, irritability, and anger. Those are some common symptoms of oppositional defiant. Okay. Anxiety, depression. I'm sorry, I said I'm starting from the beginning. What does depression look like in a young person? First of all, if you think a young person may be suffering from depression, there are some questions you can ask. Do they feel sad, anxious all the time? Let's go here. Okay. Do they feel like they're worthless or helpless? Do they feel guilty about things? Are they irritable a lot, most of the time? Do they find themselves spending more time alone and withdrawing from friends and family? Are the grades dropping? Have they lost interest or pleasure in activities and hobbies that they used to enjoy? What are their eating and sleeping habits? What are the eating and sleeping habits like? Are they eating more than usual, or they're not eating as much as they need to be eating? Are they sleeping more than usual? These are some questions to ask if you suspect someone might be suffering from depression. A huge indicator is isolating themselves from their peer group. Okay, could have some school issues as well. So let's talk about anxiety. Kind of went backwards. Anxiety, and that includes a young person who may be experiencing anxiety may complain of physical ailments like headaches. The stomach may hurt, and it may not be explained by a medical doctor. They want to, and I give you an example. My daughter actually experienced anxiety, and she would get up, and this was in the 6th grade, and she would get up every morning saying her stomach hurt. And so I took her to the doctor, and they could not find any medical reason why her stomach would be hurting. And so we did had a consultation and talked with the doctor, and he said it could be anxiety. And sure enough, that's what it was, because she was experiencing bullying in the 6th grade. So when a young person complains of physical ailments, look deeper into it. Restlessness, unexplained outburst, excessive fatigue. I'm always tired. They're always tired, and really haven't done much, but they're tired a lot. they're not sleeping, unable to sleep or settle down at night, or difficulty staying asleep. These could all be signs of anxiety. Okay. ADHD. And I won't spend a lot of time, but on this one. But if you have questions about it, we do have Mr. Osborne on Zoom, who's a psychologist who can give us a little bit more in-depth information. But it's a problem group of skills called executive function, and these skills include organization, management, emotions, which usually a struggle for kids with ADHD. They may exhibit impulsiveness, disorganization, problems prioritizing, um, problems focusing on a task, and trouble multitasking. Excessive activity or restlessness, poor planning, low frustration and tolerance, frequent mood swings, and have trouble coping with stress. And some of the risk factors for ADHD may increase if a blood relative has been diagnosed with ADHD, or the young person may have another mental health disorder. What I didn't know, and I found out when I was researching this, is that if a parent smoked or drank alcohol excessively or used drugs during pregnancy, can actually increase chances of a child having ADHD, or exposed to environmental toxins like lead. And the cases of ADHD have been increasing dramatically in the past few years. The American Psychiatric Association says that 5% of American children have ADHD. Okay. Let's talk about substance use disorder. And I found some of these statistics shocking as well. But according to the 2017 Youth Behavior Risk Survey, 12.1% of youth smoke cigarettes. And now it's vape. 44% have tried a vapor product. 26.5% currently drink alcohol. And I won't read all of them, but 21.9% have been offered, given, or sold an illegal drug on school campuses. Now, the interesting thing is that 36% have tried marijuana, is higher than, the vape is actually higher than that. What is that? What are the impact that substance use may have on a young person? Definitely family relationships suffer. Just have a negative outlook for the future. Risk of contact with law enforcement and the legal system. Increased risk of suspension, expulsion, and grades dropping. So these are some signs you need to look for, to determine whether or not a young person may be struggling with substance. Engaging in reckless or risk-taking behaviors, and giving up on pro-social activities such as church and sports, particularly if it's something they've always enjoyed doing, and it was their favorite activity or pastime, and all of a sudden they're not interested in that activity anymore. And it's not just because they are sort of aged out of that, but it's because the substance or the mental illness may be impacting, their desire to want to do something or want to participate in that activity anymore. Okay. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about mental health, youth mental health at school. Now, this statistic, which I think has increased, is the suicide rate. which is the second leading cause of death among youth ages 10 to 24. That's astounding. Um, the first one being automobile accidents. Who are most at risk? Okay, so 1 in 5 children will experience a mental health diagnosis in their lifetime. 3 to 18 have or will have. 50% of students age 14 and older with a mental illness drop out of school. Okay. And 4 of the 5 have given clear warning signs. So it's all about recognizing what these warning signs are. It's really, a lot of times people may not see and may not know, particularly when a young person might be suicidal. You might say, well, I'm with this person all the time. I see them all the time. They had no signs. There were no warning signs. I couldn't tell. Well, it's almost always warning signs. We just have to pay attention. And if you don't know what those warning signs are, then you don't know what to look for. So that's why I encourage people to take as many trainings as possible on that subject, because that the rate of suicide among young people is increasing, and we could help to stop that if we know what we're looking for. We know how to get them to the help that they need. LGBTQ youth are at an increased rate, as well as Latina females, which I found interesting. And the question that came to mind is like, why Latina females? And what I read is the higher rates because of relationship differences, and it could be, but there are probably other factors as well. But sometimes the relationship with their parents or their mother, younger females tend to be more Americanized, and mothers are more domestic and controlling. Some, not all, and are less likely to seek help because of the stigma as well. And they run the risk of and they have that fear of deportation. So if I go to get help or I'm having this problem with my mother and things are not working out, they don't want to run the risk of their parents being deported. So they just kind of, let it go. So we need to have more conversations about that with our Latino brothers and sisters. Okay. Overall, females attempt suicide more often, but males die by suicide more often because they take the most drastic means to commit suicide or attempt suicide. So, such as self-inflicted gun wounds, hanging themselves, but more often women will attempt. Okay. It's important to know that there are levels of suicide ideation. Okay, there's a low risk, and that just simply means that there's a thought, they're thinking about it, there's no plan, and they possibly will tell someone. High risk ideation involves a plan, gesture, and possible past attempt. So we have to take, anytime someone says they feel like harming themselves, killing themselves, we have to take them serious, no matter what the level of risk is, because we just don't know, okay, when that might be, when that might come to fruition, okay? So, suicide facts and figures. These are just some statistics that I'm sharing. And like I said before, second leading cause of death, and this is just in North Carolina. Okay. So when a young person comes to you with thoughts of suicide, you want to help. That's the main thing, but you have to ask. And if they don't say, I feel like harming myself or killing myself, it's okay to ask if you think there's signs there. It's okay to ask them the question, are you thinking about killing yourself, or are you thinking about harming yourself? And then listen to what they have to say, and then give them help and encourage them to tell someone, because we don't want young people to suffer in silence when there's help available. Okay. So is my teen normal? A lot of times parents, um, want to know, well, what's typical of a teenager or adolescent behaviors. You know, kind of get things. The behaviors may overlap a little, and they're like, oh, I don't know. Is that typical, or is this something I need to worry about? Okay. What's normal? What's typical? I like to use that word better. Typical. Youth will begin to process issues surrounding sexuality and sexual identity, um, who they want to be as they mature, and how they manage their relationships. That's normal. Physical and emotional changes. What's normal is males start to grow facial hair. These, the voice starts to get a little deeper. Females start to we start to grow body parts that are obvious, so it's normal for a young person, particularly when they're going through development during the middle school ages. Those emotional and physical changes will happen. So just be mindful that sometimes that comes with changing in their moods, self-esteem issues, self-confidence issues, risk-taking and poor decision may occur. That's okay. Questioning rules and authority figures and social norms. And as we all know, and I know you all have heard this before, but the rational thinking prefrontal cortex does not fully develop until age 25. So they will make poor judgment at times. They may not always make the best decision. Okay, and learning how to deal with conflict and cope with their peer pressure could be stressful, right? So that's typical of a normal teenager. And being interested in sex and interest in sexual behavior may emerge. Okay. Sometimes, um, they may want more privacy and time alone, and that's okay. And they may test the limits, and they may change the way they look, their hair, their clothes, and you might one night go to bed with your daughter dressed conservatively. I can't say the word. Dressed as conservative, and wake up the next morning and her hair is purple or pink, what have you. That's okay. Okay. Shifting moods. We all know that young people moods change overnight sometimes, particularly during that developmental period of 13 to 17, or 13 when they're in middle school, 12, 13, 14. Okay, that's typical. But when does it become an issue? Okay, what are some of the risk factors um, that may put a young person at risk for developing a mental illness? One, experimenting with alcohol or drugs. Okay. And involvement in different systems. If they become involved in social services, juvenile justice, start to questioning their sexual identity and not being accepted because of who they are, not having friends or a social support system, and not being connected to friends or social support, like a church, a club, a family. And they may have, if they have a family history of substance use or mental illness issues, can all be risk factors for an adolescent developing a mental health disorder. But the good news is there are protective factors So when we think about protective factors, we think about what are those things that can help a young person overcome what they're faced with, their mental illness. Uh, so when I think about protective factors, the first thing that comes to my mind is a connection with a parent or an adult that really cares, adult that's consistent in that person's life, adult that, there to support them. It doesn't have to be a parent. It could be any trusting, safe adult um, that can be in that young person's life. That's a huge protective factors. Feeling close to someone, feeling safe in your neighborhood is a protective factor. Okay, having access to resources and health services, and having, and economic security is another one. Is also a protective factor. Good, connected to, like I think I said, church and community, um, and being involved in extracurricular activities is really important. I think that's what saved the life of my son. Is that he was always involved in sports and continues to be involved in sports. So if you know a young person that's reluctant to do, and it doesn't have to be sports, of course, but just find out what they enjoy. What is their currency? What do they like? What makes them happy? And really encourage them to get involved. It could be art for some people. It could be music. It could be, I don't know, exercising. Um, it could be cooking. So find out what a young person enjoys, you know, what brings them joy, and try and get them involved in something. That's a huge protective factor. Okay. And counseling services offered by the school. May have some teachers on. They should be teaching right now in Zoom, but that's really important. And I know that some schools lack that resource. So if we can have the counseling service readily available for young people at school, that's also a protective factor. Okay. Here are some additional protective factors. So let's talk about effective communication. How do I talk to my child or a young person when I believe that they may be struggling or suffering in silence? Okay. The one thing I say from the get-go is always be genuine. If you don't think a young person can tell when you're not being genuine, um, they come out and say it, you're fake. But so what you want to do is you want to be genuine when you're speaking to a young person. You want to listen and allow for silence. Sometimes we as adults want to fix it right away. We have answers to their questions sometimes before they even get it all out. But listen, I think we need to do more of that. Even if it's something they say that we don't necessarily agree with or we don't necessarily think is appropriate, you need to start listening, because if the minute a young person believes you're not listening to them, they will shut down and they won't talk to you anymore. Okay, so be genuine and allow for silence, and try not to rush in and fix the issue. And try and talk with the youth where they are comfortable. Meet them where they are. And try not to compare your life when you were that age. Because we do that. I've done that. I have 3 kids. I know I probably do that way more often than I should have. But we quick to say, yeah, when I was your age, uh, you know, kids didn't do that. Or when I was your age, we're not. They're living in a very different time than when we were in the 80s. Well, in the 80s, things were very different. So we can't, because, and then when you do that, it kind of discounts what they're saying. Like, it's not about us, it's about them. So we want to make sure that we don't do that. We don't compare our life experiences with theirs. And don't trivialize their feelings. Watch your body language. That's so important. How many times we do that? Get up in their face and cross our arms or roll our eyes, and when they start talking, immediately they will shut down. And don't make promises you can't keep. But acknowledge their feelings and strengths. Okay, we want to do that first. Let them know that they're very brave and courageous for coming to you and talking, and they have great skills, social skills, or what have you. Always lead with positivity and their strengths. You'll get a lot more out of them if you do that. And avoid judgment. Telling someone that if they're thinking about, or they have suicidal ideations and they're thinking about it, that if you do that, you're going to hurt your family, or you're going straight to hell, and you can't do that. That you don't want to make them feel guilty, but you want to be able to help them work through it. And let them know that you care. You genuinely care. How do I know if a youth needs mental health treatment? Okay, so I think we kind of went through some of those earlier, but we talked about decreased enjoyment in activities, spends less time with friends and family, physical ailments that are unexplained by medical doctors, the change in the sleeping, energy, eating patterns, decrease in school attendance, performance, and sometimes they may neglect their hygiene. And they have a constant feeling of hopelessness or sadness, and they're crying a lot, they're withdrawn. Then those are indications that we need to be concerned. Or aggression. I do know males tend to be more aggressive when they're suffering from depression, as opposed to females, because that's how they express their feelings. And sometimes we just we just automatically assume they're just bad kids that just want to fight or lash out or what have you. But sometimes it's depression, and then that's how they express that. That's how it is manifested. And we're here to help them learn different coping skills, a different way to express that. But just don't automatically assume that's what's going on, that they're just mean, bad kids, because that's not the case. It could be something else, some other underlying issue. And a chronic use of substance or other risk-taking behaviors. Okay. So I gave you a lot of information. Oh, what time is it? Okay, we're right on target. Gave you a lot of information, but now you say, okay, this is great. So where do I go and get help for for my child or a youth that I'm working with? First, like I said earlier, I always feel like Youth Mental Health 101 is a prelude to youth mental health first aid classes. So that's an option. Although they're not in person now, there are folks who are working to get trained to be able to bring that to you virtually. So hopefully that will be happening in the very near future. NAMI, National Association of Mental Illness, is also another organization. Our Durham Network of Care. Here at Durham, there's a Wake Network of Care and there's a Durham Network of Care. And you could Google this or go to our website and get the information. And for crisis and treatment, we have Alliance Health and a Hope Line, suicide hotline, crisis text line. A lot of young people like to text. Okay. And I want to reiterate our Hope for NC COVID-19 crisis counseling is available 24/7 for anyone, no cost. Okay. And that's it. There's my email address. So anyone who's interested in receiving a certificate, please take my email down and email me, and I will send you a certificate. But thank you very much. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. We do have someone here to answer your questions, as well as myself. Okay. You can unmute yourself too, if you feel like you have a question to ask. No questions? Okay. James, are you there?
I am. There are no questions.
There are no questions?
Nope.
Okay. Well, thank you all
Actually,
for.
one just came in now.
Oh,
Who do we contact for the training last week to get a certificate, or how do we get a certificate?
yes. So Wendy Gant was the trainer last week, and we actually talked about getting individuals certificates from last week. So you could, if you're on this Zoom and you attended last week, you could also email me, and I will make sure that she or myself, either one of us will get you the certificates for both trainings. So does that help?
It does. It does. And the next question is, where can we find out more information about mental health first aid training?
You can email me on that one too. Yeah, and I'll there's virtual mental health first aid trainings that are going on nationally. So if there's not someone in this Durham area, which I am in the process of becoming a virtual trainer. Now, not completed my courses yet, but when I do, I will let people know, and we'll put out a blast email on when those trainings will be. If it's adult, I think James is currently certified to do virtual training for adults.
Okay. Other comments are, thanks, Deneen, good information. Thanks. Very informative. Great overview. Thanks for sharing.
Great. Thank you all for attending. And just remember, if you want a copy of the PowerPoint, I'd be more than happy to share that too.
One more question, Deneen, is please tell me, what are the key skills that you need to support a young adult with autism or ADHD?
What are the skills you need?
Yes, please.
Is that as a support person or parent?
Correct. As a support to support this individual.
Okay.
What would be most helpful in dealing with a young adult that has autism, and then what would be most helpful for someone that has ADHD?
If you're not an expert or have the the training to support someone with these diagnoses, I would reach out to us, Alliance Health, and we have experts here that can help with providing you with resources on how to help someone with autism or ADHD. As far as education and experience, that's important as well, and training is important as well. But if that's not something you're interested in acquiring, you can definitely call us at that 1-800 number, and we can help you, connect you with the resources to get the help that you need to support someone. I hope that answers. Jamie, you want to help with that too? Want to elaborate?
I think that's a good answer. The first skill that came to my mind was empathy and patience. And correct. And then connecting with groups specifically that are working with autism or ADHD that have that kind of expertise. And again, if they would email you or I, we could also connect them to additional resources. But I think the primary skills in dealing with any young adult, even across all disabilities areas, is related to patience, empathy, um, listening non-judgmentally, um, and and connecting them with the resources and really hearing what that person is communicating. People want to be heard,
Yeah.
and
Thank
letting them
you.
know that you're there to support them and ask them what they think would be most helpful now.
Okay. Thank you, James.
Another question for you, Deneen, is will there be a youth mental health first aid training soon?
Yes. I don't know what your how soon is soon for you, but yes. hopefully by the hopefully by mid-September, I think. And I know there are other folks in the area that you could always go to the National Council. Let me see if I got that. The National Mental Health First Aid
And while Deneen,
website to get that information, to find actual instructors. Um, and that's just Google or go to www.mentalhealthfirstaid.org, and you can find instructors other places that are actually completed their training that are offering it right now.
I
You're
would
gonna,
also add that the reason that we have not provided a virtual mental health first aid training recently is because the National Council for Behavioral Health has redone their curriculum. They required instructor training, and so and they have moved to a pretty complex learning management system along with Zoom implementation. So it's been a huge shift. They just didn't take the in-person mental health first aid training and basically just do it on Zoom. They did not do that. Instead, they have redone the entire curriculum and created this learning management system. So there's a learning curve there for us to get ready to be able to provide it. And in addition, right now, that course, which is very different from any other course we have, actually has a fee attached to it, which is not something that everything else we do is free. But that course is $23.95 per person. So we will keep you informed when we have those first community classes. Right now, we're just working with some key stakeholder agencies that want to pay for their employees to be trained, but eventually we will be able to roll it out broader to the community. But again, we have lots of other free trainings. That's the only one that costs, but that's what's creating some of the delays in being able to offer that course right now.
thank you, James. I think there's one more question. Oh, yeah, that was a.
Just thank you for the webinar, and I'm worried about the mental health fallout from COVID.
That's a question?
Just expressing worry about mental health fallout from COVID.
Yeah, that's why we have Hope for NC, because people need to connect with folks to talk. I mean, just counseling is so important, and just being able to connect to someone who can listen and hear what you have to say and express yourself. And it's really important that you not isolate and internalize and what's going on, that you talk to someone. These are clinicians that are available. It doesn't cost anything. Yeah, because it can be overwhelming. It can be very difficult.
And what I would add is that I think COVID is a huge issue, and we have other multiple issues all happening at the same time related to the social, racial injustice and social equity issues that are going on in Wisconsin right now,
Yeah.
related to the most severe hurricane that I understand has happened in the world, making landfall in Louisiana and Texas. When you start looking at COVID, you also have to look at the financial impacts and people's unemployment, and the financial insecurities that have been created. So there's just multiple layers. And I'll also just mention the current, election process that's has in full swing. So there's just so many different layers that might impact individuals, and especially those that we serve that may have already been struggling with their mental health, physical health, and spiritual health issues. And so this just is really a layering, and that's why we're here.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions?
I don't see any.
Okay. Well, thank you all for participating. I really appreciate you. And again, email me if you have questions or concerns. I will definitely respond. So have a good weekend and take care.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.